Eva, thank you. Tony Simpson.
I was introduced before, of course, as Tony Wilson, and I want to reassure Lloyd that I am, in fact, Tony Wilson. I read Tony Simpson's biography, and it sounded so interesting that I decided I'd go. In the 1980s, when I used to go to London regularly, the Victoria and Albert Museum ran a poster campaign, and it said, "An ace calf with quite a nice museum attached." I don't know if that was successful. I hope it was, because it certainly deserved to be, because it made clear that our public institutions, such as museums and libraries, serve all sorts of purposes which, although they weren't thought of in the first place, are crucial to their functioning and what they do. And if you take them away, that's to say the libraries, then of course the whole dimension those other things provide is lost. Whenever I visit the Central Library in Wellington, you're always buzzing with all sorts of activities. In fact, it actually is an ace calf with quite a nice library attached. Even more to the point, when my younger son moved into town to go to university, he got a job there, which included a deal in which they provided him with his main meal of the day, which relieved me of the pain of cooking for him. For the rest, he just raided the pantry, and I could go on having my lunch, my main meal at work, which was also a nice calf, but in my case with quite a nice parliament attached. And when I visited the library over the years, it's perfectly clear that it's serving all sorts of functions. It used to be a haven for smelly old alkies from the street who had nowhere else warm to go in the winter.
That's the rest of us.
Unlike smelly old alkies like me, who do have somewhere else to go. There were always at least 3 of them snoozing over the day's newspapers. I haven't noticed them for a while, so maybe they've been chased out. I hope not, because this was one of the most important functions served by the library. It was a mark of our level of civilization and egalitarianism. In a free society, even smelly old alkies have a place to go provided for them, and it happens to be the public library. Now try and get that out of your Kindle. It's possible, of course, they've been driven out by the declining standards of journalism. But I hope they're still working in some research. If you'd known what ad hominem meant, you would know to look it up in the Latin dictionary, not the English dictionary. I even hope we'll stumble over the smelly old alkies one of these days. In fact, I need to make a note of myself to visit the library next week and try and track down where they've got. I've been enjoying this apparently ancillary but central role of libraries since I was a kid. Growing up in Christchurch, I loved going into the central city and visiting the old library and going into town, as we used to say in those days, even though it was just a small suburban bus ride away. Even if I didn't need to return a book and borrow more, I just loved the atmosphere and the smell of the place. And once, when I needed a cutting board for my woodwork class, my father, who worked in a garage over the road where the central police station used to be before the earthquake pulled it down, went over and asked the carpenters who were working on the doors, could they give him a bit of wood for a cutting board. And they actually made me a cutting board. I was the only kid in our class with a Kauri cutting board. Woodwork teacher was absolutely essential. It's amazing, really, the functions that libraries serve. The Christchurch Library also contains some wonderful things called books, which no one else ever seemed to borrow, except me, like a complete run of Jane's Fighting Ships from 1938 to 1952, and a complete numismatic history of England by the Byzantine scholar Sir Charles Runciman. I can still amaze my friends and discountenance my enemies with my esoteric knowledge of things like the meaning of the words ad hominem, the armament of French wartime cruisers, and who minted the first gold coin in Britain. Henry III, if you really need to know. One of the things I did when I retired a couple of years ago was to go and immediately renew my Wellington Library's card, which meant that I learned that at the Newtown branch you can get training on the basis of using a computer and access the internet from there. Maybe that's where all the smelly old alkies have gone. I would have too if I was a smelly old alkie. Much better than reading the daily newspapers for information. You can go to the library and do it by electronic means. I must go in and have a look the next time I'm up that way. It would be a tragedy for me if they ever cut back on the libraries of Wellington. Think of all the things that happen inside them. And even still, I'm told, borrow books from them. Now, isn't that just amazing? Keep the libraries free and intact as they are, I say.